the Evolution Security Podcast. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast, where we give you the knowledge and live training to protect yourself, your family, and your country. Our hosts are Eric Davis, Aaron Davis, and myself, Brian Schilt. This show is brought to you in part by Tenacor. Tenacor manufactures holsters and weapon retention systems that work. We suggest that you check out the Velo 4 AWIB holster. We don't only recommend it, we also use them daily. Find them at tenacor.com. That's TENICOR. Use EvoSec at checkout for 10% off. That's EvoSec at checkout for 10% off. Also, if you'd like to find us online, look for us on Instagram at EvoSec USA, Facebook at EvoSec USA, and our website, evosec.org. That's evosec.org. And now also on Patreon at EvoSec USA. That's patreon.com/EvoSec USA. We would love to see donations and are working on benefits for benefactors. So, on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the show this week. I'm here with Eric and Aaron as usual. Hello guys.
How's it going?
Going good, man.
Hey, doing good. Doing good.
Well, this is a day we've been waiting for a while, hasn't it, guys?
Most assuredly, man. This is a great day.
Yeah. You know, you heard us a while back do our AAR on ECQC and talked a little bit about the Shivworks franchise and the classes they offer. Well, we actually got the opportunity to interview Craig Douglas of Shivworks, and that's what we're going to bring you here today. I don't think we're going to do much talking beforehand here. I think we're just going to head into the interview. What do you think, guys?
I agree.
Sounds good. We've got a lot of material to go over with Craig, so let's get into it.
All right. Well, with no further ado, here's Mr. Craig Douglas of Shivworks.
All right, folks. We're extremely excited to have on the show this evening my good friend, one of my most important mentors, a gentleman that has changed our lives extensively. We want to welcome to the show Craig Douglas. How are you doing, brother?
Good, man. I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Glad to support you guys. And, just super happy to spend time with good people.
That's awesome.
Nice. Hey, Brian here, Craig. Good to see you again. Hasn't been that long, thankfully.
No, sir. It has not been that long. And, dude, you had an awesome ECQC, and it was great meeting you, man. You did super well in your course.
It was so, and we'll talk a lot more about that later. But man, that was I'm still high off that, man. I gotta tell you.
That makes me
Yeah,
really
Craig, we decompress consistently and AAR on that consistently.
Yeah.
We do.
Good.
nice.
So, just for the beginning, and this is, share as much as you like, but just so people kind of have an idea of who Craig Douglas is, why don't you just give us a little bit of background and a little bit of where you came from?
Sure, absolutely. So, my name is Craig Douglas. I'm a retired sheriff's deputy from South Mississippi. I did a total of 21 years in law enforcement from 1990 to 2011. I retired in 2011 to do training full-time. This is my 8th year of training, and it's my 17th year of training under the Shivworks brand globally. I teach in 40 states, 11 countries outside of the U.S., 3 branches of the U.S. military, 5 federal agencies, and I have some standing contract work with small sections of the government overseas. So that's really about it. I'm best known for niche problem areas in the tactical realm. What does an entangled gunfight look like, standing or grounded? What does that look like inside the confines of a car? Knife work, solo structure movement, any really deep abyss niche problem, that's kind of where I dwell.
Well, Craig, on that note, we can't help but go over and discuss ECQC.
Sure.
So, for our audience that do not happen to know what that is, can you go ahead and give a synopsis of that? Frankly, that class has changed a lot of people's lives, and I think that's one reason we want to make sure that that's well understood. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the ECQC is an acronym that stands for Extreme Close Quarter Concepts, and the class is basically described as an overview of functional handgun skills at 0 to 5 feet, which I like to say requires an interdisciplinary approach to examining that problem. It's a 2.5-day class, and what we do is take firearm skills on the range and adapt them to the specific problems of entanglement inside of a clinch or a ground fight. We develop these techniques, and then after we do that on the range, we take all the live weapons off and we put on protective equipment, and we use marking cartridges and basically go full contact opposed to see if these techniques and these theories and these strategies actually work cohesively in a very free-form way in an exercise we call an evolution, which is the validation component of the day's training. And we typically do 3 of those throughout the weekend to basically try and know as much as you can within any simulation that what you're doing is actually going to work under realistic conditions. It's a fairly physical class for a gun class. With some people, it's the hardest thing they've done. And a lot of people have some significant, as you've already alluded to, changes emotionally, and that leads to them down the road of, improving their health, losing weight, learning to fight, becoming more confident. And, we see a general uptick in overall well-being when people embrace the lifestyle elements of what they learn about themselves in ECQC.
Hey, just a quick note. You'll probably remember Scott, who I did my first Evo with. He's a large gentleman.
Yes.
He turned up at Jiu-Jitsu Dynamics, and he has started Jiu-Jitsu because he came to that class and we talked. So that's a win right there.
It's huge, and here's what's interesting. I'm not a Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but there are people who had their first exposure to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in an ECQC class who now are black belts, which is pretty cool. That I have people who came into understanding jiu-jitsu as something that is important, and then they embraced the lifestyle elements of it, did a full face dive into it. Now they're Jits black belts, but their first exposure was vis-a-vis the coursework. So their jiu-jitsu lens from the very beginning was developed with self-defense and fighting and weapons in mind, which is really cool.
Well, Craig, I have to throw out some gratitude to the person that introduced me to you, and that's Mike Brown.
Yep.
And it's amazing the relationships that I've developed over the years. Some of the richest relationships I've developed have been based around training under you, the friendships I've developed with your friends, your AIs, so on and so forth, and all the people in the class. Again, I wanted to throw that gratitude out there for sure. But Mike definitely was the person that hooked me up with you, so I'm real thankful for that.
Very dear friend of mine too. Mike's a good friend and a peer. He and I first met in 2005, and Mike had done jiu-jitsu before, but ECQC kind of reignited his jiu-jitsu journey and got him really serious. And Mike's a black belt now, a good one, a competitive world's black belt.
Yeah, he was on the show several podcasts ago. It was an amazing show good friend of ours, and Aaron might allude to this later, but Aaron's been taking some private pistol lessons with him again,
Very
which
nice.
I'm a little jealous of, because he used to be my primary instructor in pistol, so
Yeah.
I'm too far away.
I've got my next one coming up here in a couple of weeks with him. He wanted to do I'll let you guys know because it's going to be kind of chilly when it happens. He wanted, hey, I think we're going to do a jiu-jitsu lesson this time. And I was like, okay, I'm no good at jits yet, and I don't want to do it with you, buddy. And he came back with one of his brilliant things. He goes, you'll be there to get better, not impressed, buddy. But I talked him back into the pistol because, I'm trying to class up quite a bit in IDPA, so he's helping me with that. Yeah, great coach, 10 miles away from me. It's great.
Awesome human being.
That he is, Craig. Well, Aaron, I think you might want to ask a little bit about ECQC and hit on your journey in it as well.
Sure. Craig, it was probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Eric finally talked me into taking the course. I was reticent like a lot of people. And then you remember this too, but my first Evo, I was so scared I was going to quit.
Yes.
But then for some reason, when that fist helmet came on, I was like, I want to do this. I want to get through this. And after that point, I've been hooked on the training.
Yeah.
For sure. And, I've taken it 3 times, and I'll take it at least no later than every 2 years, as long as you're teaching it. So, yeah, like Eric had said, it is life-changing. I know you hear that a lot, but it is a real personal journey for a lot of people. And, again, it brought me back. I had taken lots of private Thai boxing lessons from Eric, probably, Eric, 15, 16 years ago, and I was never really into it. But now, again, because of ECQC, the second time I took it, it was clear that I had to get back and start taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But then when I'm still, I've been at it a couple years. I'm still, just getting my feet in there. But I'll tell you what, it helped me a ton in this last ECQC.
Yeah.
Simple things like just guard, and at some point I think I took somebody's back. I wouldn't have known how to do that stuff previously, So yeah, that component was great. And again, I've lost about 50 pounds since that first one too. I know it's the same old story, but it's just fun to reiterate that here on the air.
Old stories are the best stories, right?
Yeah.
If the results of people embracing their inadequacies and doing something about them because of a really visceral emotional experience, are so positive, there's got to be something to it. It's interesting too, because I never really considered those aspects, but as things moved on, I realized that the process that we put people through in ECQC and the result of that process, there's a whole lot more going on with people than just the strategy and tactics of getting a gun out in a clinch or a ground fight. There's a lot more going on than that. And, I've told both of my wives over the years, that the best people I know, the most well-adjusted human beings on the planet, are the ones that come out on the weekends and shoot each other with sums and punch each other in the face and roll around, in the dirt and the grass and on mats. So it's an interesting conundrum there, but it's, I don't know. I think there's a real element of Fight Club with ECQC.
I'll say this too along those lines. You literally leave each ECQC with some people that you genuinely feel some love for.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing. I can think of several people there that's like, man, those are some of the coolest people I've ever met.
Well, I think the first thing too is that, it's a shared experience. It's a shared difficult experience. Especially if you're alumni, when you see somebody put that helmet on for the very first time and they get their guard passed and somebody's on top of them and you hear them make that awful panic noise that, everybody feels it. Everybody's like, oh man, I've been there. That sucks. That's terrifying. And you root for the person, right? Mm-hmm. You do. You root for the person. And you also, let them know, hey man, there's a way for you, there's a roadmap for you to be able to establish control and order out of this. And it's a long road. It really is. But you're going to be better in so many ways if you choose to go down this road. And that's what we really do in ECQC. We facilitate an experience, and the end user decides what they want to do with it from that point forward. And the people that come back, man, they're changed forever, and they continually get better. That's what's amazing to me in every facet of their life. They really do.
Well, Brian, why don't you say something, and then I have one other question along the ECQC lines. But why don't you give us your experience since it was your first time, buddy?
Yeah, and wow, what an experience. One of the things that I probably had a little bit better idea of what I was walking into than maybe some of the first-time students, just because I had Eric as a bit of a guide, and I had gotten at least, I think probably only maybe 15, not even 20, maybe 15 fundamental jiu-jitsu classes in. So I had some experience with just like being in body contact with people, because I know that's, some people come in and have not had that physical body contact with someone in a position like that, and they aren't ready for it. But it's great because it's helped push me in my interest in jiu-jitsu. But what I'd actually like to talk about is how we look at these combatives, we look at making all these things, but I think one of the biggest things that I took away, and I knew this before, but it's even more reinforced. Can you expand a little bit about how important it is to stay unengaged if possible? Because that's the best scenario.
Yeah, that's absolutely the best scenario. And as you know, Brian, the format of the coursework, the first 2 hours, we talk about what I call the criminal assault paradigm. And that's based on my direct experience as an undercover police officer buying drugs, guns, people, for 2 years. And, I give a rough kind of 10,000-foot view of what that looks like and describe it in pretty good detail and talk about how bad it is, and that where any self-defense course should start is by asking the question, are there things that I can do in my daily life to keep it from getting to that point? And that leads into the managing unknown contacts portion. So the first couple of hours in ECQC or Edged Weapons Overview, EWO, is spent learning how not to get to the point where you're rolling around in the ground and body fluids and broken glass and, fighting over a gun. And the rest of the class is making sense of that problem and knowing what that looks like if it does go there. But I think at the end of the course, and the course is probably 24 hours crammed into about 2.5 days, I think everybody really reflects back, especially after like their third evolution, on the importance of those first couple of hours that we spent together. So that, and you can only really have an appreciation for that by experiencing those catastrophic, horrendous losses, where you do get the gun taken out, or you even if you are a competent jiu-jitsu guy, you used your jiu-jitsu in the wrong way, and you got your gun taken out of the holster, that kind of stuff. You realize how mercurial a fight really is for your life, and how, it really is any given Sunday. It really is. So everything we can do to keep it from getting there, I think really people reflect on that quite a bit after the coursework. They only have an appreciation for that after, going there and realizing how bad it can go. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point.
Well, Craig, real quick, I just want to follow up on managing unknown contacts. I'll never forget this. It kind of seared in me. The first time I hosted you here in Olympia, I took a few assumptions with how locked in I had the venue, and not assumptions. I had requested, hey, we need this space locked down. Well, my dear, is still an instructor of mine. I happen to train at another gym now, but my instructor said, hey, Eric, is it okay if we have open mat over here? We'll be quiet. And I was like, I'm like, well, if you guys keep it down, well, they didn't keep it down.
Right.
And I remember you pulling me to the side and saying, Eric, that shit's not happening. Go square that away. And you said, this is the most important portion or the most important part of this course. And we need to square that away. And that stuck in my brain ever since. Yeah. In our courses, we definitely are teaching that as well. We just had our first course, and it went really well. And nice. Muck is on the top of that list. So one other question, kind of shifting gears a little bit on ECQC, is have you seen quite a difference in the student base, meaning, for the individuals that took the course back in its inception versus the student, or excuse me, pardon me, to use your word, patron and the clientele that attend the course now? Has that changed quite a bit?
So when I first started teaching ECQC, it was mainly gun guys that didn't have a clue as to any grappling or fighting even. They and again, prior to ECQC, the only available coursework was hitting a dummy and then backing away from the dummy or a piece of cardboard and shooting it. And that was really the extent. Sometimes guys may tussle a little bit with blue guns, but the premise for extreme close quarter shooting was to always bang, 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 punch people, hit people, grapple people, make space and get the gun out. That was the premise of it. And I think I was the first guy that started, maybe not the first guy, certainly not the first guy that started examining the problem. There were others that examined the problem, but I think I was the first guy that got on the road with a box of simunitions and a box of T-guns and helmets and started traveling every weekend and developing this niche topic into an actual body of work. And now that body of work is, but between the time I first started examining it until now, that's 21 years of focused study in this area. So when I first started teaching it publicly, it was mainly old gun dudes. Now it's really come full circle. So in the very beginning, we had older gun people who were not physically fit and didn't know anything about fighting. Now what we have are a lot more fit people, a lot more combat athletes who are interested in guns and self-defense. And I think what's happened is the course is so prolific. It's certainly, you can find everything you want to about ECQC probably on YouTube. I mean, there's probably 100 videos of either me teaching or student posted video of the coursework. So and there are plenty of AARs online, so you can pretty much get a handle on what this course is about. But what I think has happened is with so many younger combat athletes getting interested in firearms, they start doing research and they see my coursework, which historically has probably been considered intermediate to advanced coursework. But they see my coursework, and because it looks like what they already do, they jump into ECQC. So now what we're having is just the opposite. We're having people with great fighting skills with, very unpolished. A couple of people have been borderline unsafe, and I had to kind of pull them off the range. Good combat athletes that just are really dipping their toe into gun culture for the first time. So they don't know all the basic stuff that gun people know, holsters and firearms and gear and the 4 rules of firearm safety. All that stuff is kind of alien to them. So it's been interesting to watch that shift over the past 17 years, definitely.
Well, Craig, if I can kind of follow up, I got a couple of comments kind of based on that, but I'll state this. I mean, I understand them. You've had a range from, just your average folks to Div 1, high-level Div 1 wrestlers, high-level MMA, UFC fighters, obviously a bunch of black belts, in jiu-jitsu. So it is pretty amazing how when you plug the weapon into the fight, how things drastically change. And so, it's been really cool to see that over the years. But I kind of wanted to hit on what I think, in my opinion, some of the best takeaway that I've had from training under you. The first time I attended ECQC was back in 2010 when Cecil Birch hosted you in Phoenix.
Yep.
And Rich Daniels was there. And one of the things that sticks out to me is that the first several Evos, I barely remembered what took place.
Right.
And, it wasn't until I saw video of it that I was like, oh, okay, so that did happen, or this is how it went down. And I know that's the psychological impact that is taking place. We talked about that with William April, but bottom line is, over the years, this last one was my 7th ECQC. I took EWO as well. That has a similar effect. But bottom line is that good, bad, or indifferent? If I did well in an EVO or if I did poorly in an EVO, I'm to the point where the last several ECQCs I have remembered everything that took place.
Yep.
And I guess what I'm getting at is, don't you believe that is probably one of the most important aspects of the coursework?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that repeated exposure has a inoculative or inoculatory, I'm not sure what the correct word is, but effect on a person in that they tend to relax more. There's we're building pattern recognition and we're putting you in a place. Some people have even made the analogy that your first ECQC you're drowning. Your second one you might be treading water a little bit. Your third one maybe you're starting to swim. So there's no doubt that repeated exposure definitely has the ability to allow you to use more processing power as far as your mind goes, just because you're calmer. You're not in lizard brain mode in a panic, and you can recall, and your emotional state is so much more level that you can actually start to think your way through things, and that's when we see usually probably the third or fourth ECQC is when I see with a person like a pretty noticeable uptick in decision-making ability. That's what I've noticed. Yeah.
Very good answer, Craig. That really good detail and good response. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Aaron, you got a question?
So we've been focusing on ECQC, but one of the classes we've been really looking forward to taking, of course, is AMIS.
Yes.
I just haven't heard a lot of info on AMIS in some of the podcasts that I've heard. If you could just go deep in, or at least go into some of the major concepts that you teach in that class, and specifically what could drive into the pitfalls that students may have because of the extreme difficulty of the problems that you're trying to solve in that course.
So AMIS is an acronym for Armed Movement in Structures. And that's also about 24 hours crammed into 2 days. Typically, Saturday is a 14-hour day. Sunday is a 10-hour day. And it's basically my take on an interior inside of a structure problem while you're armed. So as a citizen, not looking for trouble, not working under color of authority, not in a team-based environment. And there are a lot of problems that can manifest. You could certainly interpret this as home space, domestic space, where you hear a bump in the night and you elect to arm yourself and move from point A to point B. That could be moving to get the kids on the other side of the house and move them back into a strong point room. That could be moving everyone out of the house. That could be going and looking to see what the source of the disturbance is, if you believe there's somebody trying to enter your home. This could be interpreted as commercial space, where you are caught in some kind of public event, possibly an active shooter, and you have to negotiate your way out of a structure, possibly running into a shooter. So I teach the first day of AMIS is essentially mostly the technical components of how I believe you should negotiate this problem. And we have what we try and develop in the student is an appreciation for distance, geometry, and pacing. Those three elements combine into being able to negotiate this problem as best you can. And I preface the course in the PowerPoint with the qualifier that there is no safe way of doing this. And everything that I'm offering you really is about sucking less. That's what AMIS is about. But we go through the day developing those skills. We add layer upon layer upon layer of complexity and opposition until finally, before we break for dinner, we have you inside of a structure with 3 or 4 other people. The vast majority of those people are no shoots, and one person is definitely a shoot. They have complete freedom of movement, and you have to basically clear the entire structure. So that gets pretty hairy. And then after a dinner break, we come back, and then we do all of that in low and no light with flashlights.
Awesome.
So it's a long day, and there's no physical contact in AMIS, but it's probably the most fatiguing course I teach as far as the sheer emotional and mental fatigue that happens with trying to work at this level of precision, the eye strain alone of trying to really, really, really look and see things that you're not used to really paying that much attention to is quite fatiguing. So we come back on Sunday and we go into a module that I call Managing the Don't Shoot Yet, where we start looking at a problem inside with some ambiguity. So it's not clear cut. You may be holding this person at gunpoint, but it's not a clear cut shoot moment. Or maybe legally it is a clear cut shoot moment, but it's not something that really you could realistically do, such as, a lot of people say online, hey, my line in the sand is if someone has illegally entered my home. And if you're in my house, you're getting shot. Well, that sounds great until you have a teenage daughter and, this 16-year-old kid got the bedroom wrong and slipped through your bedroom window, right? And you woke up and he's there in your bedroom and you grab your pistol and he throws his hands up and when you look at that kid that's probably going, "Hey, I'm sorry, I meant to go in Sharon's room, and I'm sorry, sir, I know I shouldn't be here." Are you going to say right there, "You're in my house," and pop him in the head? Probably not. So, we start looking at stuff like that, and if you look at Tom Givens' data, citizens do extraordinarily well when the situation is clear-cut. They do. When it's pretty obvious what's happening, citizens, when they defend themselves, when they fight back, they do really, really well. Probably better, probably too. They do better than law enforcement does. If there's any kind of ambiguity or it's not so clear-cut, it's a little gray, citizens don't do that well. So we explore that quite a bit. We work a lot of what ifs, and that takes us to probably 2 o'clock. And then we do an evolution in AMIS that combines all the content from that point forward into a very immersive, full spectrum, ambiguous, rapidly evolving scenario. And then we hot wash everybody, and they're usually on the road by 6:30. So it's a long day too. It's a long day too. So that's kind of an overview of the course. But AMIS is a true tactics course, which those are incredibly difficult for average people to find without the addition, or I would even dare to say distraction, of marksmanship. We don't have that because we do AMIS with airsoft pistols and blue guns inside of real structures that aren't shoot houses. Okay, so that and I insist on doing that. It's not a shoot house course. It's not what we're doing. It's a real structure. So it's one of my favorite courses to teach because of the decision-making element that's stressed so heavily, and because it's just something that people rarely get to experience. And I think AMIS is as important, and the AMIS experience is as important as ECQC developmentally for someone as a tactician.
Well, Craig, I think one thing that really stands out to me that I would really kind of like to highlight, I think a lot of people think they're going to grab their AR pistol or their Glock 17 with, extended mag, and they're going to go out like a ninja and take care of everything in their house. And, they just assume they're going to do that. What is it really like? I mean, you've touched on that, but it just seems like we could highlight what it's really like.
It's nothing you ever want to do unless you absolutely have to, and all my coursework is seatbelt coursework. Every class I teach is some variation of a seatbelt. It's nothing you ever want to use, and if you've got to use it, it's a collision, right? A whole bunch of things have gone wrong for you to have to use anything that I teach. So, yeah, it's. I know a lot of people have fantasies about that kind of stuff, very Walter Mitty-esque type, fantasies about doing ninja stuff or Jason Bourne stuff or John Wick stuff. But I think one thing that my coursework does is it really dispels that. And the reason it dispels that is the oppositional nature of it. I've never, ever, ever had anyone do a course that I taught where afterwards they said, "Wow, man, that'd be awesome to do for real." No one has ever said that. No one has ever said, "Man, I can't wait to get into a gunfight in a car. Man, I can't wait to, be in a ground fight with a knife. Man, I can't wait to, be engaged with, 2 armed hostiles among my family inside of a structure by myself with no support." No one's ever said that about any class that I teach. Wow, I'd really like to see what that looks like for real. So I think I do a pretty good job of dispelling all those fantasies and, those hero notions and giving people a brutal and maybe even bleak look at what this is what it is, dude. You're getting hit with airsoft or SUMS, you're getting punched or stabbed or, whatever. And that's the reality of it. You just saw it. So.
No, I appreciate you bringing those characters up too, because I can tell you, I want to have John Wick's gun. I don't want to have John Wick's problems.
Right. Exactly. And I wouldn't mind having his dog too. He's got a cool dog. He does have a cool dog.
Absolutely. And Craig, I cannot believe I've trained with you this many years and haven't gotten the opportunity to attend AMUS. Now, Aaron and I had originally, we were going to attend AMUS. I believe it was in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yep.
And then my job called, unfortunately, duty called, and I had to execute. So that said, we are currently looking for a facility that we could possibly host AMUS next year. And so I'll kind of hit you up, or we'll hit you up a little bit later, next couple of weeks, and see if we can get that set up.
Perfect.
But most certainly, just a little follow up. So it appears that the average person that takes AMUS, that they probably honestly had no clue that that's what it was going to be like. Is it that gradation higher than what the average person really thinks?
Yeah, it's they. Everyone in the hot watch says, "Man, that was an awesome course. I never ever want to do that for real." That's what everyone says. How extraordinarily difficult it is. One little misstep. Probably, honestly, the lessons in AMUS are probably harder learned emotionally than the lessons in ECQC. They are.
Wow.
I just ran an AMUS this weekend. This past weekend in Albuquerque, we've got a good facility there. Tom scored us a great place. Probably going to do it again next year because we've got this place locked in. And to a man, everyone was like, "Man, that I had no idea it was going to be that hard. I had no idea it was going to just be that bleak." So yeah, it's. I would say those lessons in AMUS are you seem to carry those as far or further than you do even with ECQC.
So this is killing me. I got to know, on average, how big a facility are you using, like square footage?
Well, if we do a full class of 16 people, and that's what I cap it at, we're talking about, we need a facility that is at least 25 rooms.
Wow.
And it can't be it can't be like one single long hallway with door, like a school. It has to be windy, interconnected, complicated, visually overwhelming geometry. Anything you'd look at and go, "Oh my God, I wouldn't want to do that." That's probably where we want to train.
Yeah. No, I can see how that makes sense, because you could have people moving from one space back into a space that they previously occupied without covering the same track.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we've covered that as far as we want to for now, but I definitely appreciate you sharing that with us. And I was actually just looking at your schedule and noticing that you had just done that. That's very cool. And on that topic, those of us that know you well know that you're always on the road teaching, traveling for tactical conferences, coming on podcasts like this, basically wound tight for weeks on end.
Yes.
What is your number one favorite activity to decompress?
Number one. Well, I like to kind of get away from all the tactical stuff, and I like to cook. I like to, I'll do the hipster thing and make a noun a verb. I like to cocktail, and I like to dress well and enjoy the nicer things in life. That's what, and train jujitsu. I like to put on my gi and or do kickboxing or boxing. I like to do orthodox combat sports with no thoughts of self-defense. You know, my leg locks are terrible, so I'm working on my leg locks right now. And you know, leg locks, you know, are very questionable when it comes to like self-defense. But when I come home, I don't really think about self-defense a whole lot. You know, so combat sport, lifting. I still love lifting. I think you know, I've recently, I think because my one of my friends, or a guy that's become one of my really good friends, is the owner of the nicest restaurant on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the White Pillars, and I've thought more and more that if I got hurt or I don't know, bored, I'm not bored, but if I got hurt and couldn't do ECQC or teach or whatever anymore, I don't know, a third career, I might go to culinary school. I've thought about
Nice.
Awesome.
I've thought about that. I enjoy cooking. I like the creativity of it. I love food. You know, you can tell that by my ever expanding waistline, and you know, it's just an interesting challenge. They're technical components with you know, being a chef that are, you know, very, very, very fine and refined, just like, and certainly more so probably than anything in the tactical realm. It's interesting. It's an interesting art and science. It is. And I like to see people happy, and good food makes people happy. It does.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
I like that you brought up the lifting aspect, because anyone that listens to our podcast is tired of me in our accountability section talking about the fact
Right.
that I CrossFit, lift, jiu-jitsu every week. And I actually just did a 2-day lifting seminar, and all we covered was the clean and jerk and the snatch in 16 hours of coursework. And man, what you could work on those lifts for the rest of your life
Yep.
and never get them right.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
very cool. Very cool.
When I did my deep dive into powerlifting, I didn't do anything except squat on Monday, bench on Wednesday, and deadlift on Friday for the first year and a half. That's all I did. I did no accessory lifts. That's all I did were those 3 lifts. 1 lift a day, every other day, for a year and a half. That's all I did. And it worked too. I mean, Eric's known me for a while, and you know, my body comp and frame have changed significantly in the past 5 or 6 years. You know,
Yeah, Craig, that's exactly what I was just about to say, is that I have known you when you were a lot smaller guy.
Skinny smoker.
Yeah,
You know?
yep. I do remember those.
Yeah.
Sitting on the side of ECQC coaching.
Right. I used to hate smoke. I could smoke a cigarette down in 3 drags and had a huge ash on the end of it, like an 1.5 inches long, glowing white hot that I was squinting through. You know, yeah, that was a good character.
But you absolutely, Craig, had a major body transformation and strength levels. Like I remember, you know, because of course, in many cases, I'm helping AI, or at least let you demo techniques. And I just remember feeling just a huge difference in your strength level.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was an awesome transformation. And I kind of want to circle back. I can't believe that we really hadn't talked about it. I knew that you were into food, and I kind of had the idea, you know, because we monitor, we go back and forth, all of us on social media.
Right.
But I was going to bring that up. Mm-hmm. I love to cook as well.
Yeah.
Aaron's had quite a bit of my meals at the house. And I've had the exact same thought that I would love to take some culinary classes one day. So that's an awesome thing we share for sure.
I'll say this: the best steak I've ever had has been at Eric's place. I mean,
Nice.
the best I've ever had. And luckily, he cooks steak for me every time we come up for ECQC. So that's one of the highlights.
Very nice.
Maybe one of these times I'll be able to cook for you, and I would appreciate your actual critiquing.
Absolutely, man.
But anyway, that's great, Craig. That's good stuff.
Well, real quick, Craig, we're going to keep this hopefully going in a little bit different direction as we kind of talked about before we went on air here. But I want to go deeper into some of your loves of things that are opposite of martial arts. But real quick, I just don't want to forget to ask you about this. There was something interesting that we were at dinner a few years ago, and my wife happened to be there, and we started talking about one aspect of your life that was pretty interesting that we didn't expect. Now, you were, of course, like we said, and you talked about, you started out and you were in the military and you were in law enforcement, of course. But as I recall, you were on the opposite end of law enforcement for a while there, weren't you?
I was a troubled kid. I had 3 felony charges when I was 14 years old for burglary, grand larceny, and possession of automatic weapons. I burgled.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a troubled kid. I was a drug user. I was a thug, and I was headed towards the penitentiary. There's no doubt. So I was sent to military school for my last 2 years of high school. And between that and the Army and getting away from the people I'd surrounded myself with and having a couple of pretty key positive male role models in my life at certain times when I really needed them the most, that kind of steered me to the right side and got me wearing a badge versus running from one. So, which is what I had done. But yeah, I was a bad kid. There's no doubt. It's probably why I was a good undercover officer, because somebody described me as a law-abiding bad guy. And there's probably some truth to that. There is. There's probably some truth to that. I'm definitely, historically, I'm probably been more inclined towards mischief than order, which is why I gravitated, to the assignments I did in law enforcement. I was not McGruff. I didn't wear a dog suit. I was not the guy going to talk to kids in schools. I was out buying drugs and kicking doors. That's what I wanted to do.
Awesome.
Well, Craig, as long as I've known you, I did not know that story.
Yeah.
And it's probably because we don't always hit on personal things because we're busy training and executing. But yeah, that's real interesting, and it does explain. I was thinking that same thing about how that would have contributed to your success as an undercover agent for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
very cool.
Before I was 18 years old, I'd smoked marijuana, I'd tried cocaine, I'd done pills, and my neighbor was a Vietnam vet who tried to take some troubled kids like me and a couple other guys under his wing, and we were all gun nuts, and he used to show us his guns. And then one day he hauled out some guns that he had brought home from the Vietnam War, 2 AK-47s and a Russian PPSH-43. And then he drug out a 50 cal. And probably about 3 months later, they were on a family vacation, and we decided to burglarize Harry's house and take those guns because we wanted them, and stole a bunch of pistols and, stole those guns. And one of the kids in the burglary with me actually snitched, and that's how we got caught and popped and adjudicated. And then Harry, of course, ended up having a big ATF raid on his house because we were all too skinny and gangly to get the 50 out of there. So they hit him, and he ended up getting convicted, but he didn't go to prison. He cut a deal. But I remember that 50 cal ended up on a Coast Guard cutter that was at Naval Station Pascagoula there. I think when I came back home after the Army, somebody told me that. So, yeah.
So it wound it up where it belonged, I suppose.
Yeah, pretty much. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I was a bad kid. There's no doubt. I mean, I was an awful kid.
Well, and now you contribute so positively to thousands of people. What a cool story, honestly, Craig.
Yeah. Well, it just shows that, hey, man, anybody can, make changes in their life, and, they can overcome things and turn their life around. I certainly did. I certainly did.
Well, hey, Craig,
Aaron, go ahead.
Let's take this in a more interesting area. I've seen you, of course, on the social media, a lot of your love of clothes. And I think one of the things that stood out to me a couple of years ago is that you were really dapper, had a nice suit on, and you stated that that you were going for maybe the Southern gentleman, or I think it was maybe even the Southern gentleman lawyer look or something.
Yeah, the John Grisham lawyer, the Atticus Finch look, kind of like to kill a mockingbird.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's dig in a little bit deep into, it really makes sense that you are into these things because you need a break from what you're engrossed in all over the world as you're teaching the courses to people like us. But dig into the fashion stuff that you're into, the suits. I know you love boots. Go into some stuff that you love about fashion and clothes that most people maybe haven't heard about unless they're really following you on Instagram and stuff.
Well, I first got into it when I was promoting to captain, and when I was in competition for the captaincy, there was a civil service interview, there was a board interview, and it was us supposed to put our best foot forward, and I decided I needed to wear a suit for that. Most guys were wearing uniforms, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to wear a suit. And I didn't have a good suit. I didn't know how to buy a suit, and I went looking locally and got a suit. It was an awful suit, but it was a suit. I didn't know anything about it. Felt uncomfortable in it. Started doing some more research on the internet, and then had another occasion right after that where I had a funeral and I needed a black suit, and I didn't have a black suit. So I bought another suit probably within 6 months of my captain's boards. And that one was a better suit, and it looked better and it felt better, and I knew a little bit more about it, and I just got into it. And then I retired, and then within 5 months of me retiring, I got a letter from the state of Mississippi saying the county miscalculated your time, and we're rescinding your retirement, and you're going to have to come back to work for 8 months if you want to get revested in the retirement system. So this led to a big knockdown, drag out between our county and a couple of other counties in the state of Mississippi, which eventually they won, and the Mississippi State Supreme Court actually ruled against the public employees retirement system and ruled in our favor. But nonetheless, what happened was I had to go back to work for the county. My spot at the sheriff's department had closed, and for me to get credit for the month, I only had to work half the month. So I had to work 80 hours a month to get that month as credit in the retirement system and have that accrue towards my time. So what they did was they said, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you in the public affairs office, and you show up when you want, kind of leave when you want, get your hours in, try and be helpful, try not to be in the way, but we want to work with you because this apparently is our fault that this has happened to you. So they were very accommodating. So for the next 8 months, I was a part-time employee working in the public affairs office, and it was an opportunity for me to dress better. So I did. I got into it. I started dressing better, started spending more money on clothes, started spending more time on Style Forum and a couple of other pretty well-known online sites, and just kind of developed my skill and started experimenting with this. And what was interesting to me was how good I felt when I dressed well. B, the effect it had on people who were around me. So probably the most profound effect, or one of the moments that was the most profound for me, was we had the press in a board of supervisors meeting. And it was after the meeting, and there were some new press people. And the supervisors, which is the equivalent of an alderman or a city councilman, so they're your elected officials. They came out, and I was right on their heels. I was talking to a supervisor, and I got cornered by a new person from the press who just assumed that I was an elected official. And they made that assumption based on two things. Number one, my carriage. Number two, the way I was dressed, because I was way better dressed than anybody else in there, and I looked the part, and they just kind of assumed that I was in charge. So, and this was something I knew from the other side, like from the side of buying drugs and looking authentic to the part. If you're going to buy crack, you need to look like a crackhead. If you're going to buy ecstasy in dance bars, you need to look that part too. I always had to dress that way, but I'd never really thought about the aspects of imagery and attire from the standpoint of leveraging behavior. So it really became a thing with me, and I enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it to this day. And more often than not, I'm dressed well when I go out, when I do things, when I eat, when I drink. It's quite often I'm in a well-fitting jacket. I have a pocket square. I have good shoes. Everything fits, and I probably have more people that contact me about dressing better, men and women, than I do about tactical questions. When I post things on social media, the lifestyle stuff, like drinking, eating, and dressing, that gets way more commentary than the tactical stuff. So it's pretty cool, man. And here's the other thing too that I appreciate about menswear and the hashtag menswear movement. It's kind of a callback to things that were passed on from father to son historically that somehow or another have been lost, like shining shoes, okay, how to wear a suit, how to tie a tie, just stuff like that was historical man knowledge, right? I mean, if you go back and look at like your grandfather's stuff, I can remember like playing with all my grandfather's cufflinks, this neat stuff, that he had, that men had, part of their everyday attire. And I think, there's just some nostalgia there, and there's some classic masculinity that's positive that I think we should probably be reinvestigating.
Well, Craig, I agree with you, and I didn't really, I have to admit, I'm one of the guys that, probably the nicest thing I have is a long sleeve button up shirt and a tie. Mm-hmm. But I don't wear that very often at all.
Sure.
And I would say that, seeing you go through that, and it isn't just being, patronizing. I thought, you know what? I've got to clean up my dress when I'm socializing. And so, I am honestly going to invest, in a couple jackets, some and properly fitted. And so I might be asking you some questions on some stuff to go to.
You would not be my first tactical dude makeover, Aaron. I've done several.
Awesome.
So here's your next career right here.
I've done several of those. It's a blast. It's fun, and it's really hard to describe the sense of well-being you get from clothes that you look great in, fit well, and feel good. You're like, man, one of the best stories is me giving Cecil a makeover. So I dragged Cecil to this menswear place I found in Phoenix, and I'm going through and I'm grabbing him jeans and a jacket, and he's kind of doing a Cecil sigh. He's sighing, oh God. And I've got a whole bunch of pocket squares, and I'm like, nope, don't do this. Here, put this on. Nope, use that belt. And I'm kind of dressing him and helping him get dressed. And he can't really see himself. I'm like, no, you don't button both buttons, just the top button. Put the pocket square in. And he's harping at me like he usually does. He's like, he always does this. And, it's not always about your way. And he stops mid-sentence, turns over, sees his image in the mirror, and literally interrupts himself. And he's like, I wish, I look really good.
Awesome.
Just, it was totally unrehearsed, and it was a very genuine emotional reaction. And Cecil knew, once again, I'm right, and maybe you ought to look at this stuff. So he's gotten on board with that, and Cecil dresses better now, and he enjoys it. So it's a ton of fun. And it's a good skill. And again, I think the power of imagery and appearance and things like that, focused and wielded, I think that's a pretty
Craig,
important
real
thing.
quick.
I do.
So just for fun, so this is one of my guitars, which is a very exclusive guitar. There's only one like this one.
Wow.
And I've got several of them around the room,
Okay.
made for me by a gentleman named Saul Cole. He's one of the most respected luthiers in the world. And I say that to go back to your clothes. Fine gear is a blast.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
And I know that from what I've seen that you have some stuff in your clothes collection that you really love. Now, maybe it's not the most expensive stuff, or that's going to be on on the runway in Italy, which probably sucks anyway. But what is some cool stuff? A handful of items that you really like to put in something you're going to wear out on a great time.
I'm gonna be actually going to a wedding on Sunday. I'm gonna make a brief appearance at a wedding, and I'm gonna be wearing a Brioni suit. That's about a $6,000 suit. I look great in it. I'll probably be in about $10,000 worth of clothes between shoes, and watch, and tie, and everything else. So
okay, what are the shoes?
John Lobbs is an English Northampton shoemaker. I'll be probably wearing a set of Lobb monk straps, double monk strap shoe. They'll be mirror polished. You'll be able to shave in my shoes if you choose to. Everything has just the right roll, just the right crease, and it's really let's face it, it's really the Bond effect, right? That's why Bond is so appealing. Bond has, he looks great. He's got a great adventurous life. He's a badass, and all the women want to sleep with him. So who does not want to be Bond? And he eats well and he drinks well. Who does not want to be Bond? Everybody wants to be Bond, and the suit, that's a big part of the Bond effect, the Bond, allure. So absolutely, I love dressing well, and I love wearing suits. I really do.
Very cool, Craig. I love that discussion, honestly. Yeah. This is fun.
Yeah.
So kind of moving into or segueing still yet into kind of the social life. Are you? I understand. Are you a big fan of bourbon, or do you kind of?
Oh yeah.
So what are your favorite bourbons?
I don't really have a favorite bourbon. I've probably got 4 or 5 favorites. I've got a booze guy, and he keeps me well stocked and small batch, hard to find, expensive bourbons. Anything from Buffalo Trace that comes out once a year, I usually get a bottle of that. Whether it's a bottle of Pappy's whether it's a bottle of, Sazerac. I usually get something from the small batch collection once a year when it's released. Love Scotch. Love a buddy over in the UK really, really kind of turned me into a Scotch snob, and I'm a huge Islay malt fan. I love Ardbeg and the smoky, peaty, kind of briny Scotches. I love those. I love gin. I'm a huge gin fan. I like gins.
Nice. So, and as far as, do you have? I mean, I know that we see some of the cocktails you make,
right?
Now, do you have some favorite cocktails that you return to?
I tend to drink sours. So I usually, do whiskey sours, always with an egg white. Usually 2 parts spirit, 1 part simple syrup, and I use gum syrup, and then 1 part citrus. I like gimlets. That's another sour, 2-1-1 ratio, except it's gin. Gimlets have a strong military tradition as far as the British Navy goes. So, it's definitely a masculine cocktail. I like daiquiris. I do. I like Hemingway daiquiris, which are boozy and have less sugar. And, Papa Doc was known to throw those back pretty, I think his recipe came from, as far as the ratio and the proportions and how much ice was, he wanted to be able to drink 2 of them on the way home, and that's how the drink was constructed. So interesting character, heavy drinker, obviously, but yeah, any classic sour, margaritas. I love margaritas. That's again a sour. They're all sour. They're all 3 ingredient cocktails essentially. So
nice. And I may be speaking out of ignorance, but speaking of Hemingway, I wonder if he developed an affinity for cocktails in his spying days.
Yes, maybe very well have.
I think a lot of people don't know that he was a spy at one point.
Right.
At least that's what I understand.
Right.
So,
or he just had a love for good Cuban rum. And I love every time I'm abroad, I'm hunting for things I can't get in the U.S. and Cuban rum. In fact, I'm down to 3 bottles right now, so I might have to go overseas to get me some more Cuban rum.
better square that away.
Exactly.
We're starting to get to the close of the show, and I think we've taken more of your time than we had intended.
Big deal.
A huge blast. So we might have a small amount of follow-up questions here, but we'll start to close it out. On another note, 3 of your favorite musicians.
3 of my favorite musicians. Frank Sinatra, Mick Jagger, and probably the Wu-Tang.
The Wu-Tang. Very cool. We're as long as I've known you, I'm learning a lot of cool stuff. This is why this is cool.
Right.
I think
right.
we are starting to close up. Aaron or Brian, you guys got any more questions for Craig?
Well, man, I just go
ahead.
The only thing I'll say is I can't wait to get you back out here again. And if we can't make that happen, we're gonna definitely make time to get to wherever you are. Because,
for Amos,
if we can't make Amos happen, we're gonna come to where Amos is at.
Okay.
So.
Okay, cool, man. You guys are my Pacific Northwest crew, and anywhere I can spend time with you, it's always time well spent. So thank you very much. Look forward to coming back out to see you guys or seeing you wherever you catch up with me.
Awesome. Aaron, what you got?
Again, we wanted to try and get some different information out, and man, this has been fun. You might guess that the musician question is always something I like to ask. We've been asking that to everybody.
Right.
And it's fun to hear what people say. I mean, great stories about how you became a fashionista. Just a great time, Craig. I'm glad Eric pushed me to take my first ECQC. I consider you one of the coolest people I've ever met, along with just a handful of people. So, man, thanks a lot for coming on our show. We hope the listeners get as much out of it as we have.
Well, man, I appreciate you guys having me. Whatever I can do to support you in this venture, you guys have always supported me. And again, that's what it's all about. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on and connect with your audience. And it's always good seeing you two. Always, you three.
One last thing, we want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to go ahead and tell the audience, where to find you.
So like you said, I'm on the road probably about 40 weeks out of the year, typically. I'm all over the country. Go to shivworks.com, look for the 2020 training schedule, which is not up yet, but will be up in the next 48 hours. And I'm probably going to be somewhere close to you within a couple of 100 miles, anywhere in the U.S. So I'll have coursework. And at every point, I've got 2 new states I'm going to hit this year. So I'll be up to 42 states that I've taught in. Yeah.
Man, that's great, Craig. And I'll start to close with this. I think, guys, we just might have the most interesting man on this show.
Oh, yeah.
Just to, was it the Dos Equis
needs a new spokesperson, I know where to send them.
That'll be my 4th career.
Yeah, there you go.
Dos Equis spokesperson. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, we're going to go ahead and let you enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your week prior to you having to hit the road again. So this has been great. Until next time, brother, you take care.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Man, that was spectacular, guys. I'm still kind of jazzed about that. That was really something. That was more than I expected it to be. What do you guys think?
Man, it was incredible. So much to learn. And, I've known Craig for many, many years. And I definitely count him as a friend. But I learned so much in this interview. Very, very cool. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, lots of fun topics. And, Craig opening up a lot. And, on the outset, especially with any of the guests, we try and get them to open up a little bit with the non-martial arts stuff. So I enjoy all that, and Craig did not disappoint.
Well, one of the cool parts that I really liked and actually really surprised me is when Craig started talking about his desire to learn footlocks, and that he loved doing martial arts training that didn't necessarily have a real good role on the street. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah. As tested and fine-tuned literally for the street and pure self-defense that he, has become renowned all over the world for. So, yeah, that was interesting.
No, it was great to learn several things that I didn't know about Craig and to do it in that format. And it's, again, really the biggest thing, is I'm really looking forward to train with him again. That is my goal right now. I would love to go do an Amos, man. That would just be sweet.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, we got to make it happen, whether we get it going there in the Pacific Northwest or we get to go to another one.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll roll it right into accountability here, and I'll take us in. This was good to get back in the gym this week. I was sick last week and did not get much done, and those weeks always weigh heavy on me because I want to be getting work done. And when I have to take a break, by one thing, it takes me a while to get to that point mentally to realize I need to, and then when I finally do it, there is that little twinge of where it's hard to get back in there. But I got 3 early morning workouts in this week. I got back to jiu-jitsu. I did not get any jiu-jitsu last week between being ill and it being a holiday week. That was Thanksgiving, just for those guys that wonder when we're recording this. That really just blew a hole in my jiu-jitsu schedule, but it was nice to get back in this week and get a couple in. But the real cool thing about this week, along with that long holiday weekend, I was able to shoot Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this last week. And, Friday went and did some long range stuff. We were only shooting 100, but we were chronographing rifles to get data for our long range shoots that we do. That stuff is critical when you're running out to 1,000. That stuff matters. And we were got 5 or 6 rifles across the chronograph, and just updating some of our data sets for the ammo we're using. Saturday, I got to go shoot a 22 silhouette match, which was cool. It's really cool because it's a veterans fundraiser. It was not an NRA match this time, but it was just a fun match, and all the proceeds go to the veterans, so that was cool. And then Sunday, got to spend a little time with Eric. He'll talk a little more about that, but we got to do our drills. We're doing some pistol drilling. They did a little rifle stuff, but I was just doing pistol drills, and I got to do my fast drill. So my accountability on the fast drill is I pushed myself to shoot my Glock 19 from concealment, and let me tell you what, this is good. I shot poorly. I only got a 10.25 was my fastest time clean. But what I learned is I need to work on retrieving magazines from cover. And that's why. I could have just really gone after it and tried more and more and more. But what I need to do is drill pulling magazines clean from cover, because in that time, I completely fobbled that magazine inside my shirt all 3 times that I did it. So I'm glad that I pushed myself to that level, because what it did was expose my weakness and gives me something to work on. So I'm not unhappy about that time. I'm glad that I found something that I need to work on, because a lot of times I'll shoot, even if it is concealed, like IDPA style from a vest. That's not what we do in the real world. We're either covering it with a T-shirt, or your coat's zipped up, or what have you. So it was really good for me to get that in and understand. So I was still fine with the time, and I shot well, but that definitely is what I need to work on. So what do you think, Aaron?
Well, I was just going to point out and agree with you. Yeah, that when you're doing these drills like the fast drill, I mean, it's supposed to be fairly realistic for someone that's actually carrying, and getting under that shirt to get to a magazine is fairly difficult. And I'll tell you what, I actually carry an extra magazine in my pocket. So, that may not be the best way to keep it, but I actually can reload fairly well from my pocket. And you know what? Next time I run that drill, I might run it that way, because I can be honest, I don't think I ever carry a mag in a pouch in the real world. So, but as I think we've all heard that, Eric, isn't it Jeff Cooper that says that you carry a spare magazine so you can have a full gun on the way home from a shooting?
Yep, you got it. Jeff Cooper for sure, yeah.
So, I mean, especially when you have 15 plus 1 in a 19, or, depending on what you have. I'm not saying you won't ever need to reload, but okay, on that point too, isn't it John Correa that is the good YouTuber on analyzing shooting videos? Sorry if I'm getting the name wrong.
No, you're right, John Correa.
But he says that he has never seen a reload in the thousands of videos that he's seen where it made a difference.
Well, and I think he was also talking about, I could be wrong too, that was very specific about civilians.
Yeah, true.
But even in law enforcement, it doesn't happen near as often, unless there's a projected gunfight. Pardon my pause there.
Well, yeah, so it's good to point that out, that a lot of the time reloads are really just an administrative task that we do need to practice, but more than anything, they show up in competition, right? But okay, so I just wanted to comment on that. That was a good point to bring up, Brian.
Yeah.
So For my accountability, guys, I'll just go into what I did and then I'll explain some of it. So instead of going over the fast drill, I took a break from that this week because I'm really trying to work on my consistency, and I found that the main thing that I need to work on is simply, I think I said it before, I'm working on getting my grip perfect, watching my sights, and then my trigger in that order. And so I get to go to the range on my lunch hours because my range is about a mile away from my office, which is really nice. But so I simply got it 25 yards, and I had a bunch of full 17-round mags, and I just sat there and went to town on one of the Steel Challenge plates that are 18 by 24. And I of course, shot it really well. There were a couple of pulled shots here and there because when you're starting to when you're shooting, it is very difficult not to wait for that report on the still or look at your target. So again, I'm really trying to focus on not leaving my front sight when I'm running through a string of fire. So that's that. It was some good drilling, and I think I'm going to do that again tomorrow. In addition to, I'm going to go ahead and shoot the fast drill again so I can report that on our next show. Along with, I think we're going to start another drill too, aren't we, Eric?
Yep.
You can get to that. But okay, so I'm going to lament a little bit. It sounds like I'm just focusing on my shooting, like I'm just making it a priority. But again, I'm able to do that because I work right down the street. But man, my workouts and hitting jiu-jitsu has been really difficult. I've been playing 3 to 4 gigs a week and lots of crazy work. So it's really put a damper on my workouts. So I've been squeezing in some good hefty walks with my wife and my kids, get some family time in and some exercise. But one of the fun things is my youngest son, Graham, he has all of a sudden started grabbing my old skateboard and getting on it. So I went ahead and got a cool new skateboard here at age 46. I decided to get a signature model, Jason Lee, who was my favorite skateboarder when we were teenagers, right? He was a monster, wasn't he, Eric?
Absolutely.
So I got a new skateboard, and I've been riding around with my son up and down the hills, and I'll tell you what, it's some pretty darn good exercise. So I'm improvising to get my cardio in there, guys. And I did make one jiu-jitsu class, and man, I'm feeling really, really behind in jiu-jitsu. So I'm looking forward to this season slowing down so I can really hit jiu-jitsu hard again. But I did get to work with one of our instructors because there was an odd number of partners in the class. We were working fundamentals, and I got to work with, again, one of our good instructors named Ashton. It was great partnering with him because I got many private lessons right there on the side of the mat, so that was great. Again, real quick, I'm still hitting my dry fire every day, but I've been doing it in shorter sessions, but doing it about 2 to 3 times a day. And lastly, I know I'm rambling on, guys, here. Sorry. Next week, I get to go and have another private lesson with our good buddy Mike Brown. So again, really looking forward to that. I'm hoping that I show some improvements to him, but we'll see. But that doesn't matter. At one point, he did tell me about that I'm not there to impress, that I'm there to get better. So on to you, Eric. How about what do you have, buddy?
Well, I'll first say that I continue to be jealous that you get to have those privates with Mike, and I mean that lightheartedly, of course. Back in the day, Mike and I used to shoot once a week together, and of course, eventually I took private specifically with him, but not being there now, I don't get to do that, of course. But so I'm a little jealous. But as far as my accountability,
it is a blessing for sure.
Absolutely. As far as my accountability of the week, I had 2 strength workouts, one early morning, one afternoon. I didn't do any specific cardio. Like Brian last week and like Aaron right now, the audience may hear in my voice, I've got a sinus infection. So I was real consistent with jiu-jitsu last week, both gi and no gi. This week I've not got to go yet because what I have is contagious, so I don't want to bring that to the mats. But that said, next chance I get, I'll be on the mats. But 3 dry fire sessions. Believe it or not, I did 2 of my dry fire sessions with carbine only, which I'll kind of reflect on when I talk about the shooting this week. The shooting was with Brian out at his place, and man, it's always awesome when Brian and I get to do the accountability drills together. We always learn so much, and it's just good to be able to shoot together. And plus, it adds that additional pressure when you're shooting with your peers. So that's always a good thing. I seem to be at a threshold on the fast drill. I'm going to have to pick apart the individual pieces. My best run was 590, which the week before I had done 596 and 599, so I only gained just a little bit. But that said, I'm fairly glad about that, but I want to get that advanced rating knocked out. But that's going to take a little bit longer. But now as far as what we did after, so it was kind of like that was the work, although it was fun. Then afterwards, John and I decided to do some carbine drills, and one of the things we worked on was bounding overwatch and communication, and that's just a fun drill. If anybody in the audience, so I'm sure there is, knows about basic bounding overwatch drills with a second person, and it's just a lot of fun. But that was a blast. So with that said, that's my accountability of the week. It's time to move to another drill. And first I want to say, probably should emphasize this a little more. If the audience, the members in the audience that have not had professional assistance with drawing from a holster, we really recommend that you get with a professional, get with an instructor that helps you do that safely, because that is the inherent side, and more to the point, it's the reholstering that's more a little more on the more dangerous side. So please get professional help if you've not had instruction drawing from the holster. So this week's drill is the 5-yard roundup. This was developed by Justin Dial. The distance is 5 yards. We're back to the B8 repair center. I think we were all ready to get rid of that B8 for a little while. It was kicking our butts, but we're back to it again, which I honestly welcome. So all of the strings are a 2.5 second par time. The first string is draw and fire 1 round. Second string is from low ready, fire 4 rounds. And then that's two-handed shooting. It didn't specify here. And string 3 is strong hand only, low ready, fire 3 rounds. And the last string, again, a 2.5 second par, is support hand only, low ready, fire 2 rounds. Now, I'm looking at that drill. I've not shot it yet. I frankly think that's going to be a tough drill from what it looks like to me. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's see what we do out there, folks. I'm going to give it a try this week, and we'll report back next accountability. So, well, guys, I think that about does it for the show. You guys got anything else?
No, man. It's been a heck of an evening. That was quite a show to get through.
Yes, wonderful time. I'm still pinching myself that we get to do what we get to do on here. We were just podcast junkies ourselves, and to be involved in this, and have such great hosts to work with, co-hosts, and the knowledge that we get to gain and share on here between us and learn from other people, man, it's awesome.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
Well, I guess we'll talk to you guys here shortly when we come up and do this again.
You guys stay safe.
Yeah, over and out, guys. See ya.